Okay, let's dive in. This is the deep dive where we take your source material and, well, quickly pull out the most important insights.
Right.
So you get the key info without needing to wade through everything yourself.
Exactly.
Today, we're looking at a source you shared with us titled Problematic Public Figures, a coffee talk.
That's the one. And our goal here is, pretty direct, just to unpack what this specific source says about the behaviors and characteristics it links with certain public figures.
Got it.
We're really sticking just to the framework and points made in this coffee talk piece itself.
Fascinating. Okay, so what does this document identify, like right off the bat, regarding core character attributes?
Well, it starts by describing figures who are notably high in extroversion,
Extroversion meaning.
meaning they're often very sociable, quite forceful in how they interact, lively, and, tend to really crave attention, significant attention.
Okay. And what about on the other side of that?
Well, the source points to them being low in agreeableness.
Low agreeableness.
Yeah, which the source suggests shows up as a tendency towards rivalry, maybe even hostility, limited empathy, too,
Hmm.
and a clear preference for control, definitely not collaborative approaches.
Intriguing. The document also touches on low conscientiousness.
It does, yeah. It describes individuals who might be impulsive, perhaps a bit chaotic,
Okay.
and often show a disregard for conventions or, thorough planning. That's how the source puts it.
And tying into emotional responses, how does that fit in?
Elevated neuroticism gets mentioned.
Ah.
Characterized in this source as being highly emotionally responsive, particularly sensitive to criticism, maybe quick-tempered,
Sensitive to criticism?
and especially vulnerable to what they perceive as insults.
Right. Okay, now, building on those traits, the source lists characteristics it connects with narcissism in these figures. What stands out there?
It highlights an inflated sense of self-importance, a strong need for excessive praise,
Excessive praise.
social conduct that can sometimes be abusive, and importantly, a notable lack of compassion.
And does it mention ambition? Like big ambitions?
Absolutely. Big dreams, yes. The source includes dreams of limitless achievement, influence, brilliance, that sort of thing. Part of the pattern.
Okay, so how does the source connect these characteristics to actual behavior, particularly around power and control?
It links them to tendencies toward, authoritarianism
Yeah,
and a real focus on dominance.
authoritarianism and dominance.
Yeah, the document describes assertive, dominance-focused behavior, using language and even gestures specifically to establish authority.
Hmm.
It frames conflicts really starkly, purely as wins or losses.
Right, that idea of positioning oneself as a strong man or strong woman leader, I think the source calls it that.
Exactly that phrasing. And the source also points to an inclination towards endorsing hierarchical systems.
Hierarchies.
Right. Prioritizing loyalty above pretty much any disagreement and adopting punitive measures when they face dissent.
So how does all of this then translate into the way these figures communicate,
Yeah.
according to this specific document?
The source describes a communication style that really relies on repetitive, emotionally intense language.
Repetitive and intense.
Yes, and it notes a regular use of superlatives. Gives examples like enormous or catastrophe words to really amplify the impact.
And is the communication usually, collaborative?
Not according to this source, no. It finds the communication is frequently contentious or confrontational even,
Especially towards critics.
especially when directed at critics or people they see as adversaries, yeah.
And any other key elements of their communication approach that the source identifies?
Yes, one more thing. A strong dependence on branding and identity issues is also listed. That comes up in the source's discussion of their communication.
Okay. Finally, this coffee talk piece offers some insights into cognitive and behavioral patterns. What sort of things stand out there?
It mentions quick changes in subject matter. That's noted as a notable behavior.
Right, jumping around, along with making assertions that sometimes seem contradictory.
That's in there too, yes, noted in the source.
And how do they approach decision-making based on this?
Well, the document points to a tendency to favor intuition, gut feelings, basically,
Over data.
over decisions based on data or, thorough analysis. That's the tendency highlighted.
Wow. Those are all really fascinating points drawn straight from this coffee talk source you shared with us.
Right. Every point we've touched on today comes directly, solely from that specific document and its analysis. We haven't added anything else.
Absolutely clear. So just to quickly recap for everyone, this deep dive helped distill the characteristics that this specific coffee talk source associates with certain public figures.
Hmm.
We covered personality traits like extroversion or low agreeableness, narcissistic tendencies, inclinations towards authoritarianism and control.
Specific communication styles and those distinct cognitive patterns we just discussed.
And again, we focused entirely on extracting and presenting the points just as they appear in the source material you provided.
Exactly. We just surfaced what that specific source says.
Precisely. So now here's a final question for you, the listener, to think about. Based on the characteristics outlined in this source, things like, say, favoring intuition over data, maybe making contradictory assertions, or that aggressive dominance, how might recognizing these patterns, as described by this specific source, shape your understanding when you're observing and interpreting public figures moving forward?